Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my particular pride and privilege and many other things which I cannot emotionally describe to welcome each one of you to the inaugural Bibek Debroy Memorial Lecture. Tonight we celebrate one of India's greatest scholars, the only man who in his lifetime was able to translate both the Ramayana and Mahabharata. And I would not be incorrect if I said that that was only a small fraction of what he achieved in his lifetime. If Bibek Debroy had done just that, just translated the Ramayana and the Mahabharata in his lifetime, that itself would be enough, because it would be a feat that no one else had achieved. But that he managed to do many, many other things, including chair the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. His last public job is in itself an extraordinary feat. I want to begin by inviting onto the stage two people who are absolutely seminal to this evening's proceedings. I want to invite, of course, Suparna Banerjee, the wife of Dr. Debroy. Suparna, if we could please have you on stage. Many people in Delhi would agree, people who know Dr. Debroy and Suparna Banerjee, that a lot of what Dr. Debroy did, especially in his last decade, was all due to Suparna Di. I think there is absolute agreement on this. And I want to invite on stage, and thank you very much, sir, for accepting our invitation, Mr. Shaktikanta Das, Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister of India. Thanks very much, sir, for agreeing to be the speaker in the inaugural Bibek Debroy Memorial Lecture. We could not have thought of and found a better person than you to deliver this lecture. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I always struggle to say what Dr. Debroy meant to me, but suffice it to say that Dr. Bibek Debroy had two roles. One, he touched many lives like mine who knew him personally, but of course he meant something much bigger than all the lives he transformed. And when I think of him, if you take in a sense, the long arc of history, I cannot but point out, as I have earlier done in writing, that India has had a long tradition of the figure of the Raj Rishi, the austere, saintly figure, man of wisdom, who would counsel political leaders, at that time, of course, the kings. In my mind, Bibek Debroy was the last of the Raj Rishis of India, a man devoted, and dedicated to the spirit of India, in service of Ma Bharati, constantly working. In all the years that I knew Bibek Debroy, Bibek Da to me, all he ever asked for was a quiet room, a pen and paper, and a computer to continue his work. In fact, Suparna Di would often laugh that if it hadn't been for her, and this is absolutely true, Bibek Da would have no social life and he would know no one, because his personality was such. And all the people that we have gathered here today, and all of you who have taken time off to come and attend this lecture, so many of you are here because Suparna Banerjee encouraged, let's just say, Bibek Debroy to go out and meet people. He really had the temperament of a monk. He really had a temperament of a scholar who wanted to cut away from his everyday noise of his world and really focus on his work. Even in the last days when he was in the hospital, The only thing Bibekda would ask was how a book project of his was doing, when he could return to that project, how he would complete that project, when that project would see light of day. And once the project came out, he would have absolutely no interest in it. I often asked him, how are your books doing? And he had no idea how his books were doing because he had never bothered to find out. In fact, in the last 1 year of his life, every time I met him, he was angry with me because I was taking time to finish the project that he and I were working together on, the Ashtavakra Gita, which turned out to be the last published book of his in his lifetime. Perhaps he knew, and I would always think that, what's the rush? We will get it done. Perhaps he knew, as he always knew, that time in a sense was running out. To celebrate Bibek Debroy's life is to celebrate the scholarly ideas of India, to celebrate in an India which is in a world full of turmoil, that we can still hold up that one example of people who are uninterested in material power and who truly live for knowledge, to give knowledge, to spread knowledge, and to help us all gain knowledge. The last thing I would say about Dr. Debroy really is that there is no advice, and I've written this in one of my obituaries to him, so I'm happy to say it. After I got to know Bibekda, there is nothing that Bibekda never gave me advice on. What I should eat, how I should lose weight, something that I still haven't managed, how I should lead my life, what I should read, how I should conduct myself in public, what jobs I should have, who I should marry. There is, in every aspect of my life, Bibekda had a strong opinion. And I have to say, I almost fulfilled everything he told me to do. 1 or 2 things are left, but I've fulfilled most of them. But thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Of course, it's a solemn moment, but above that solemn moment, I would like you to think and recognize that tonight we are not just not sad that Bibekda is no longer here, because I really think he is. We must celebrate his life. And today we gathered to celebrate his life. I want to now invite Suparna Banerjee to say a few words about her beloved husband.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here today. I'm truly overwhelmed by the love that you all shown, the respect and the gratitude you have shown towards my late husband. As I stand before you, I'm feeling an amalgamation of nerves, sadness, and joy all at once, which may cause me to fumble and stutter. I hope you will understand and be patient with me. Let me begin by sharing my perspective on the man I knew the best, my husband, Bibek Debroy. He was truly exemplary in every way, a wonderful husband, friend, guide, and philosopher. Despite his hectic schedule and the many roles he juggled, I can never say I felt like a neglected wife. As Hindol just said, probably like he would have never stepped out if I had not come into his life. So all the people who knew us as a couple would always see us together in all the social gatherings. He never forgot birthdays or anniversary, always making time out for shared interest, such as whether it was watching or catching up on the latest OTT thriller, enjoying a movie together, or having a special evening at our favorite restaurant. Beyond being an economist, translator, thinker, and public intellectual, Bibek was above all a seeker. He was deeply attentive to the meaning of love, life, relationships, and the metaphysics surrounding of life and death. Bibek often referred to me as his Ardhangini, dedicating the 10 volumes of his unabridged translation of Mahabharata to me. This sentiment is well documented online, but it deserves to be reiterated. Ardham bharya manushasya, bharya sheshatam sakha, bharya moolam trivargasya, bharya mitram Marishyata. I hope, Vivek, I have lived up to that. It means a wife is a half of a man, his greatest friend, the foundation of righteousness, prosperity, and pleasure, the one who stands by him until death. When we decided to establish this memorial lecture in the month of January, there is a reason behind it. January being his birthday month. Secondly, but January also is the birth month of Swami Vivekananda. And he was an ardent fan and admirer and disciple of Swami Vivekananda. While I was wrestling with the purpose of this memorial lecture, I was thinking how to go about it. I thought about Bibek, and Bibek would have disdained anything that felt ceremonial or self-important. He had little patience for grandiose words, meaning of devoid of meaning, sorry. Thus, this lecture was conceived not as a tribute carved in a stone, but as a living conversation about ideas, institutions, discipline of thought, reflection in this noisy world. He possessed near monk-like discipline. His translations of the Mahabharata and Ramayana and Purana and other texts were far from mere hobbies or side projects. They were acts of deep commitment. He learned Sanskrit relatively late in life, not to show, but out of sense of responsibility towards this text. He understood that our civilization's wisdom spans beyond economic policies and Sanskrit shlokas. It lives within our temples, our art, our forgotten traditions, and in the sacred feminine energy that has consistently formed the foundation of our culture. At home, as well as those who worked closely with him, Bibek could be exacting. He had little tolerance with imperfection, yet he was remarkably generous and gentle with those who were eager to learn. Bibek was often described as a polymath, though he never used the word himself. His interest in railways, law, urbanization, dogs in Indian mythology, fountain pens, limericks were never random. He was drawn to systems, to how things worked and how policy choices left long shadows. Even his love for fountain pens became a way to think about Indian manufacturing, regulation, and the lost industrial opportunity. Bibek always remained his own person. He worked across institutions and political dispensations, but he did not belong to camps. He valued independence of mind, and he was wary of noise masquerading as conviction. Those who knew him well also knew that beneath the productivity and the wit, there was a deep inwardness and constant engagement with larger questions. In the days before he passed away, Bibek wrote a column reflecting on his days in the hospital. He wrote, "There is a world outside that exists. What if I'm not there?" He suggested almost mischievously that there would be no permanent loss, excepting for me. He even put me in a pedestal of modern day Savitri. I understand what he meant. He was resisting vanity, resisting the idea that one's life must loom larger forever. But he was wrong. Not because loss must be loudly proclaimed, but because influence, which often works quietly, through his writing, his scholarships, his mentoring, and his insistence on seriousness. Bibek shaped how many people think today, and that does endure. This memorial lecture is meant to carry the spirit forward. It is meant to be a space for thoughtfulness, for disagreement without rancor, for patience in a hurried age. It is meant to value institutions, ideas, integrity over applause. In this spirit that we have invited Sri Shaktikanta to deliver the inaugural lecture. Bibek respected those who work quietly to build trust, who understood the credibility is earned over time, the stability is not accidental, and the restraint is often a form of courage. In this public life, Shaktikanta has embodied all these values and more, and that makes him a fitting choice to begin the series with. I would also like to thank Dr. P.K. Mishra who had been like a mentor, like a guide, without whom I wouldn't have been standing in front of you, who helped me right all through the transition of this new life. As in the honor of Dr. P.K. Mishra and the work he has done for the country, I wish to dedicate Bibek's last book, economic books on reform agenda, to Dr. P.K. Mishra. Now comes to Dr. Hindol Sengupta. Again, without Hindol, this event wouldn't have happened. He is the one who cajoled me. He's the one who took the initiative to write the letters to ISC. He's the one who, like a true prodigy of Bibek Debroy, planned this whole event. Many people ask me, what are you going to do with all the unfinished work of Bibek on unpublished work and the translation which he could not finish? Are you going to do it? I wish. I neither have the capability or the intellectual knowledge or the knowledge of the language to do so. But I'm extremely happy to announce that Hindol Sengupta has come forward to take this work forward of all the translation which he could not finish. I also want to thank two more people, Mr. Shyam Saran and Anita Saran, and ISC to come forward in joining hands to make this lecture series an annual event. There are many more people I would like to name, but if I start doing that, I think the whole evening will pass by like that. I will not come to finish to that, but I thank you one and all of you who has come here and who has stood by me during my most difficult and trying times. Thank you all. Thank you for remembering Bibek also, not just for affection, but with seriousness. And thank you for helping ensure that the conversations he cared about should continue, thoughtfully, independently, and with humility. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Suparna. I must, in all humility, accept that I will only try to finish Bibek Da's work. I have neither his genius nor his, his capability of infinite hard work. But as Bibek Da would always tell me, I shall endeavor to at least lose weight to do the work properly. Before we go on, there is a small, very small video tribute that we have put together. And before Mr. Das speaks, could we please play that video tribute? It's a very small tribute, but it's a nod to Bibek Da's life. Singular honor to invite Mr. Shaktikanta Das, Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister of India, to deliver the inaugural Bibek Debroy Memorial Lecture. Sir.
Srimati Suparna Banerjee, Professor Hindol, distinguished guests. It's a great honor and privilege for me to deliver the inaugural Bibek Debroy Memorial Lecture. The initiation of this lecture series represents our collective tribute to Dr. Bibek Debroy and his legacies. I am immensely grateful to Srimati Suparna Banerjee and Professor Hindol Sengupta for inviting me to deliver this lecture in memory of Dr. Bibek Debroy, whom we all admired so much. I had the privilege of interacting with Dr. Bibek Debroy very closely and discussing several topics of economic relevance from time to time. Bibek Debroy was a polymath, as already has been mentioned. He indeed was a polymath. You said that often he is described, but he was indeed a true polymath. He was an astute reformer and a prolific writer who contributed to India's shift from a planned economy to a market economy. He served, as all of you know, as the chairman of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, member of the Niti Aayog, and chair of key committees on railways, infrastructure, and also on issues like state development. His work influenced long-term growth strategies and policy reforms of both the central and state governments. He was known for his clarity, explaining complex issues with simplicity. He bridged academia and policy making and wrote widely on economics, law, and literature. Bibek Debroy's contributions to economic literature blended rigorous analysis with ease of understanding. He wrote extensively on the game theory, income inequality, legal reforms, and infrastructure policy. Bibek Debroy translated, as has already been mentioned, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and the Bhagavad Gita, making Indian classics accessible in modern English and blending scholarship with literary clarity for global readers. Bibek's work on the Vedas stand out for their high quality and significance. His dual legacy, namely economic scholarship and literary translations, underscored his rare ability to traverse technical domains and cultural narratives. Considering his extensive contributions to literature, education, and public policy, he was conferred with the Padma Shri in 2015 and later the Padma Bhushan posthumously in 2025. On top of all these achievements, there was this warm and friendly Bibek, ever smiling with a subtle sense of humor. At times, his comments could be very brutal, but they were always honest and disarming. In fact, Bibek always reminded me of Vidur in the Mahabharata. Last year, when I was back in Delhi after 6 years, I wished Bibek was around to carry forward our interesting conversations on wide range of topics and issues. As a tribute to our friend Bibek, I have decided today to speak on the theme Indian Economy, a story of rising credibility. This topic, I thought, is contemporary and I do hope would be a true tribute to Dr. Bibek Debroy and his faith in reforms and the Indian economy. Today, we stand at an inflection point where shifting geopolitical winds and trade policies are reshaping the global economic order. Traditional multilateralism, once a cornerstone of global governance, is under severe strain. It is increasingly being sidelined by geopolitical rivalries, protectionism, and fragmentation. Key international institutions are struggling to deliver on their mandates. Institutions which were once the bedrock of rules-based system are underperforming in their core mandates. Trade and supply chains, once seen as neutral conduits of globalization, are increasingly being utilized as instrumentalities of disruption and dominance. Reshoring and friendshoring of supply chains, prioritizing strategic alliances over global integration are fragmenting the global networks. This trend reflects a broader geoeconomic fragmentation encompassing restricted technology flows, barriers to labor mobility, and uncertainty about global public goods. Critical sectors like semiconductors, rare earths, energy, and pharmaceuticals are now leveraged as tools of influence, exposing vulnerabilities, especially in the dependent economies. All these shifts have profound implications. Global trade growth has slowed, supply chains are being realigned, and multilateral global order is becoming ineffective. The share of trade in the global GDP has stagnated, signaling a shift from hyper-globalization to regionalization. At a certain level, these trends may result in rising costs and inefficiencies. Emerging markets, and within that, the global south in particular, is vulnerable. For them, economic volatility is getting amplified and opportunities for convergence are getting slimmer. In sum, the consensus that powered globalization in the past decade has frayed. Multilateral cooperation has become harder to achieve, while the ideals of free trade have given way to protectionism and regional blocs. Recognizing these realities, India's stance in the changing world order is clear. India stands for a cooperative and rules-based global system. But at the same time, we are proactively forging partnerships and strategies to secure our national interest in a world where power is more diffused. We, of course, acknowledge that the multilateral system must be revitalized even as we adopt new alignments. In this fluid global landscape, India has embraced Atmanirbharta, that is self-reliance, a vision of self-reliance, as the overarching principle of our policies. Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi had spoken about Atmanirbharta way back in 2020, and well before the rest of the world recognized its importance in the context of the prevailing fragmented global economic order. Atmanirbharta is not being isolationist, but a strategy to build core competence and resilience. Economic Atmanirbharta means developing the capacity to produce critical goods and technologies at home and reducing over-reliance on foreign sources. Atmanirbharta indeed has two complementary dimensions. First, economic self-reliance, and second, geopolitical autonomy. A self-reliant economy with strong domestic capabilities gives us greater strength to sustain our economic growth. And an autonomous foreign policy enables us to deal with the external environment in our best national interest. Together, they ensure that India's rise is resilient, sustainable, and beneficial to us and also to the world. This will enable India to contribute to global growth not as a dependent participant, but as a leading architect, credible, self-reliant, and ready to partner with others for mutual progress. In the words of the Prime Minister, India does not advocate self-centric arrangements when it comes to self-reliance. India's self-reliance is ingrained in the happiness, cooperation, and peace of the world. He had said this in his address to the nation during the starting of the COVID, during the commencement of the COVID pandemic in May 2020. Now, conceptually and operationally, our idea of Atmanirbharta is built upon the tripod of stability, reforms, and schemes that address certain structural gaps in our economy. I repeat, conceptually and also operationally, our idea of Atmanirbharta is built on the tripod of stability, reforms, and schemes that address certain structural gaps in our economy. Let me elaborate on each of these three aspects, starting with stability. For a little over 1 decade, India has maintained a rock-solid commitment to macroeconomic and financial sector stability. This stability is indeed the bedrock on which our growth story is built. In fact, despite multiple and overlapping global shocks, that is the COVID-19 pandemic, the conflicts in Ukraine, and other such flashpoints from time to time, which disrupted economic activity and trade and led to high inflation, high public debt, low growth, and synchronized monetary policy tightening worldwide, the Indian economy remains resilient and is expected to be the fastest growing major economy in the world. Now, that's a bit of a long sentence, so I will read it again for the sake of clarity. The stability is the bedrock of this stability which I am talking about is the bedrock on which our growth story is built. In fact, despite multiple and overlapping global shocks, and I mentioned which were the global shocks which took place in the last few years, and how these global shocks disrupted the economic activity, trade, and also the entire global stability which prevailed before that, the Indian economy remains resilient. And not only that, it is also expected to be, Indian economy is also expected to be the fastest growing major economy in the world. Indian economy rebounded after the COVID-19 pandemic with an average growth of 8.2% from 2021-22 to 2024-25, driven by resilient private consumption and investment. In 25-26, the real GDP is expected to grow at 7.4% as per the projections of the National Statistics Office, the NSO. Further, India is projected to contribute around 18% of the global GDP growth in 25-26. Equally important, inflation has been brought under control due to prudent monetary policy and supply side measures. When global commodity prices spiked post the supply shocks caused by the war in Ukraine, India responded with resolute monetary tightening and supply side measures. As a result, inflation has now sharply declined. In October 2025, headline CPI inflation fell to a record low of 0.25% year on year and remained at 0.7% in November, well below the target band of 2 to 6%. And this happened for the third straight month. Such low inflation has provided major relief to consumers and supports economic stability and growth. Fiscal consolidation is also progressing well, with the central government's gross fiscal deficit falling from 9.2% in 2020-21 to 4.8% in 24-25. The general government's fiscal deficit declined, that is the deficit of both central and state governments put together, declined from 13.3% of GDP in 2021 to 8% in 24-25, reflecting sustained focus on fiscal consolidation. The general government's gross debt to GDP ratio declined to 81.6% in 24-25 from the peak of 88.4% in 2021. In fact, if you recollect, during the COVID-19 pandemic, almost every country in the world had to resort to fiscal expansion, and they were, the borrowing requirements of every government, almost every government, went up very high. India also sort of had to loosen its fiscal deficit targets, and the borrowings went up during those years because every government, like India, like any other country, had to finance a huge requirement of supporting the economy when economic activity and other activities had come to a standstill. But I think what distinguishes India with regard to both monetary expansion and fiscal expansion is that we not only expanded, but we were able to roll it back well in time. And I think that makes India unique among the countries. There are countries which sort of went on expanding fiscally, went on expanding from a monetary point of view. But I think the correction, that is the coming back to the normalcy, is something. I think the way India timed it, I don't think any other country in the world did it. And as a result of which, today the Indian economy remains very stable from the macroeconomic point of view as well as from the monetary stability point of view. So as a result, the general government, that is the government's debt to GDP ratio, has started coming down after going up to 88.4%. And the IMF has projected it to decline further to 76.9% in 2030-31. This commitment to fiscal prudence is restoring headroom for future counter-cyclical policies and keeping public debt levels sustainable. The financial sector in India has also witnessed remarkable recovery over the past decade. The health of the banks, the non-banking financial companies, and other financial entities are now perhaps at their best. The GNPA, that is the gross non-performing assets of banks, have fallen to incredible levels. The banking sector has also witnessed significant improvement in governance. Banks which were on the edge have not only recovered but are showing healthy growth. What is more, foreign investors are also reposing confidence in such banks which appeared to be on the brink not so long ago. So much so that in early 2023, when the banking sector in certain advanced economies were on the verge of collapse, the Indian banking sector remained stable. On the external front, India's balance of payments position is healthy with a sustainable current account deficit. Our foreign exchange reserves remain robust at a little below $700 billion, and it is acting as a buffer against external shocks. Strong reserves gives confidence to the investors, particularly foreign investors, that India will be able to service its external payment obligations under all circumstances. I must add that all these outcomes are not by accident. They are the result of prudent policies and resilient buffers built over time. The current and also the expected macroeconomic and financial sector conditions in India are inspiring trust and credibility. I now turn to the second leg of the tripod, which supports India's rising credibility, namely structural reforms. Underpinning India's stability and growth is a continuity of structural reforms that have been sustained over the past 1 decade. During the last decade, the government has enacted and implemented several landmark reforms across taxation, financial architecture, labor regulations, and business facilitation. This continuity and consistency of reform momentum, what the Prime Minister recently described as the Reform Express, reflects our commitment to addressing long-standing bottlenecks and unleashing India's full productive potential. Let me highlight some of the major reforms which I feel are real game changers, and I will very briefly state how they are real game changers. The goods and services tax has been indeed a game changer for the Indian economy. It unified the country into a single common market by replacing a web of cascading indirect taxes. It has increased tax compliance and efficiency. It has broadened the tax base, and it has removed interstate barriers. The recent comprehensive review and next-gen reforms in GST, which was done in September 2025, that is last September, they have made the tax structure simpler and even more consumer-friendly. It has indeed unleashed a strong impulse to domestic consumption and growth. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 has fundamentally reformed India's credit culture. Prior to the enactment of the Insolvency and the Bankruptcy Code, resolving a stressed company in India was almost a futile saga dragging on for years. In fact, many of you will remember that when a case went to BIFR and then it simply dragged on and on and on for years without any light at the end of the tunnel, and in fact you didn't know how long the tunnel was. The Bankruptcy Code in fact established a modern time-bound insolvency resolution process, shifting power to the creditors and enabling faster recovery of value. It's a major reform that aids and fosters banking sector stability. I was fortunate to have been personally associated with these two big reforms since I happened to be in the finance ministry when both the Bankruptcy Code and the GST were enacted in 2016 and 17. In parallel, reforms in the real estate sector through the RERA Act have also enhanced transparency, accountability, and consumer protection. By addressing chronic issues in this critical sector, such as project delays and opaque practices, RERA has contributed to greater formalization and trust within the real estate sector. It has benefited both home buyers as well as developers. It also has introduced a strong impulse for long-term buoyancy of the real estate sector. Another major reform shaping macroeconomic stability and very close to my heart has been the adoption of the flexible inflation targeting framework in 2016. By assigning a clear mandate to the Reserve Bank to maintain inflation at 4% within a tolerance band of plus minus 2%, this framework has helped reduce inflation volatility, anchor inflation expectations, and enhance the credibility and transparency of monetary policy. These are essential prerequisites for sustainable growth. The 4 labor codes, which were enacted in 2020 and were very recently notified in November 2025 for implementation. This marks a transformative consolidation of 29 labor laws into 4 unified labor codes, covering wages, social security, industrial relations, and occupational safety. These reforms are important because they aim to reduce regulatory complexity, encourage formalization of the workforce, attract investment, and generate higher employment by offering greater labor market flexibility. At the same time, and very significantly, they strengthen wage protection, improve social security coverage, promote safer working conditions, and also higher women labor participation in the economy. The third leg of the Atmanirbharta tripod is government's strategic interventions in sectors where we find certain structural gaps. These initiatives are intended to bolster domestic competence in critical sectors. The production-linked incentive schemes, that is the PLI schemes, covering 14 key sectors ranging from electronics and automobiles to pharmaceuticals and solar PV, are prime examples of this approach. The PLIs have attracted top global manufacturers to make in India for the world. Other such strategic initiatives include the National Infrastructure Pipeline, the Gati Shakti for integrated infrastructure development, the Digital India Mission, which has revolutionized governance and service delivery, the Startup India program, which has made India the third largest startup ecosystem globally. Flagship initiatives such as the Bharatmala and Sagarmala have strengthened freight corridors, border connectivity, port infrastructure, and coastal shipping. Port capacity has doubled, while cargo movement through inland waterways has increased more than sevenfold, reflecting a shift towards multimodal transport. In civil aviation, the UDAN scheme has operationalized 88 new airports, significantly improving regional connectivity and making air travel more accessible. Over the past decade, annual air passenger traffic has grown at a robust pace, reflecting rising mobility and economic activity. These schemes are aligned with our Atmanirbharta goals and are structured to produce lasting impact over the next 5 to 10 years. In parallel, significant steps are also being taken to promote ease of doing business and ease of living. During the past few years, over 40,000 unnecessary compliances and 1,500 archaic laws were scrapped or amended, a cleanup on an unprecedented scale. In this direction, a high-level committee for regulatory reforms in the non-financial sector has been set up. The objective is to overhaul outdated laws, decriminalize minor procedural offenses, simplify compliance processes, and thus create a more business-friendly regulatory environment that would support higher growth and employment. The Jan Vishwas Bill 2025 expands on and that has been introduced in the Parliament. Now it is before the Parliamentary Select Committee. The Jan Vishwas Bill 2025 expands on the reform agenda of Jan Vishwas Act 2023 to cover 16 central acts administered by 10 ministries. By streamlining processes, enabling digital compliance, and signaling a governance shift from policing to facilitation, Jan Vishwas 2.0 aims to further strengthen investor confidence, promote entrepreneurship, and support India's broader ambition to become a more efficient, transparent, and business-friendly economy. Now, progress towards self-reliance is also drawing strength from other measures like the National Critical Minerals Mission, the Electronic Component Manufacturing Scheme, the support package for semiconductor manufacturing, the recent schemes to promote shipbuilding and manufacture of rare earth permanent magnets in India. Social sector reforms have been equally important. For example, the Ayushman Bharat initiative has significantly strengthened healthcare delivery by expanding access to primary care and by providing financial support for major hospitalization expenses. I would like to emphatically state in this context that these schemes and initiatives and a few more, which I am not mentioning in the interest of time, these are not random schemes. They are parts of a larger strategy to build domestic capacities in critical areas and make India self-reliant. As we look to the future, India is uniquely blessed with multiple strengths that are coming together in a historic confluence. These strengths, which consist of our youthful demographics, our world-leading digital public infrastructure, the deepening of financial inclusion, and other technological and our technological and AI potential are each powerful on their own. But when combined, they reinforce one another, creating a multiplier effect on growth and development. Let me briefly explain how these factors are aligning to create an unprecedented growth tailwind for India. First, with a young and aspirational population, India will continue to have a growing workforce for years to come, even as other economies face aging and even shrinking workforces. This demographic dividend gives India a massive growth advantage. A rising share of productive workers supporting relatively fewer dependents can supercharge economic output and savings. At the same time, it is clearly understood that a demographic dividend cannot be on autopilot. It must be steered and its potential imaginatively harnessed. With this objective in mind, the government has placed huge emphasis on schemes like Skill India, expansion of higher education and vocational training, and promoting labor-intensive sectors. Second, the India stack of our digital public infrastructure, that is DPI, one of the most lauded success stories of India in recent years, consisting of foundational digital platforms like the Aadhaar for digital identity, the Jan Dhan for bank accounts, the mobile connectivity, the UPI for instant payments, the DigiLocker for paperless document verification, the GSTN for tax, and so on, have all together revolutionized how citizens interact with the state and the economy. India has essentially provided its billion-plus citizens with a digital railroad, on top of which innovation has flourished. The spin-offs from digital public infrastructure are very well documented, so I am not going to repeat them here. Shortly stated, the net effect of digital public infrastructure has been a massive increase in efficiency and deepening of financial inclusion, which is the third multiplicative strength which I wish to highlight. India has leapfrogged in financial inclusion and ease of doing transactions. Many other countries have taken note of these developments and are now adopting or looking to adopt elements of our India stack. In real sense, digital infrastructure has become India's new soft power with export potential. This not only helps those countries, but also opens new markets for Indian fintech and IT companies. Fourth, in the areas of technological innovation and artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, space, biotech, pharma, etc., India has significant potential. We have already proven our capability in innovations like our space program that is reaching the Mars at a fraction of the cost of others, the successful moon mission, developing a low-cost COVID vaccine, and progress in drone technology with multiple applications like those in defense and agriculture, etc. Now, these have all demonstrated and proven our capability. Building on our strong base of STEM talent, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics talent, as India produces highest number of engineers and science graduates in the world, we are positioning ourselves at the forefront of the new tech revolution. The government has also set up the AI, that is the artificial intelligence mission, aiming to make India a major center for AI development. Our IT industry and startups are actively exploring generative AI, drone technology, quantum computing, and more. The presence of R&D centers of tech giants in the global tech giants in India would mean that we are getting plugged into the global innovation network. The opening up of the space sector to private players has resulted in startups building satellites and launchers in India. In biotechnology and pharma, India is already a global leader in generics and vaccines. We are now moving up the value chain into biosimilars, new drug research, and advanced gene therapies. Our large, diverse genetic pool and disease profile make India an important place for medical innovation that can serve the world. The nuclear energy sector has also been opened up for private participation. The recently enacted Shanti Act provides a vibrant framework for creating an energy secure India on a sustainable basis. All these technological leaps can have a multiplier effect across sectors. Bringing all these together, we may envision an India 10 years from now, a young workforce highly skilled in digital tools, seamless transactions and innovations on world-class digital infrastructure, more and more economic activity getting formalized, and India-led innovations in AI, health, space, driving productivity gains. This is a picture of an economy speeding ahead on multiple cylinders. This multiplicative effect can be expected to accelerate the pace of our economic growth in the coming decade. Now let me now conclude. India stands today at the cusp of a historic journey from being an incredible India to a credible India. There will be headwinds and challenges emanating from known and unknown sources. In the recent past, India has successfully emerged out of what appeared to be perfect storms caused by multiple global shocks since COVID-19 year of 2020. And now with the policies that the country has adopted, the wind is in our sails. We are indeed on our path to become Vikshit Bharat. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Das, for that wonderful speech on India's economic transformation and its future. I would now like to invite Suparna Banerjee to give a token of our appreciation to Mr. Das. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mr. Das. It is now my pleasure to invite you to another part of this evening that is equally important. Let us for a moment remember, please rise and let us for a moment remember Dr. Bibek Debroy before we conclude our proceedings. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seat. And please do join us for high tea, where we have organized some of the things that Bibek Da liked to eat. So high tea is served outside. Please join us there. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for the inaugural Bibek Debroy Memorial Lecture. I especially thank the India International Center for joining hands with us for this program.